Let's talk about hot topics. Arizona's controversial immigration laws are at the heart of a legal debate being played out in the U.S. Supreme Court.
We've seen many protests and debates over the issue. Now we welcome back to our show our legal expert, Robert Pallitto from Seton Hall University, to discuss this really volatile topic. Good to have you here.
Good morning.
Bring us up to speed on what's happening in the Supreme Court. This was last heard back in late April.
Very end of April, April 25th, the Supreme Court heard arguments in Arizona versus the United States, which is the Obama administration's challenge to the Arizona law that creates very strong enforcement and detention powers in the state government.
All right, so what is happening? Where does the case stand now?
Well, the case is under discussion, so the opinion will probably come out sometime this summer. But from the arguments, we can see that there is a lot to talk about. First of all, the law itself does a couple of different things. One of the things it says is that any time Arizona law enforcement stops a person for a traffic stop or any other reason, they must, there is no discretion involved, they must ascertain the person's immigration status before they can release them. And until they ascertain that status, they can detain the person. And then on top of that, the law also creates new offenses under Arizona law, such as traveling without federally acceptable immigration identification documents.
This is something, some of these underlying issues have been in debate in California and Texas for years beforehand. Why is this such a big issue in Arizona?
Well, first of all, I think the political climate in Arizona is very volatile. I mean, it's been sort of the crucible of the anti-immigrant movement. The Minutemen and other groups in Arizona have been very vocal about this issue, and it's found its way into legislative politics. The other thing is that the law is pretty far-reaching. I mean, like I said, it not only creates these new offenses related to immigration status, but it also requires law enforcement to stop and detain people. And this could mean that a person could be detained for a period of time, maybe a couple of days even, maybe longer, and they haven't done anything wrong. It turns out that their status is lawful, but it's taken that time to verify it.
Without representation, you're saying?
Right.
And can they be pulled over simply to check status?
No. At least in theory they can't. The check only takes place when they're stopped for some other infraction. But of course, when a police officer stops anyone, it doesn't mean that they know for sure that the person has committed an offense. It means simply that they have probable cause to think that the person has.
It's similar to, yeah, go ahead.
There has to be some other underlying reason that they're being stopped.
Yes. But the problem is that now under Arizona law, one of the criminal offenses is to be traveling without carrying registration documents, and another is to be employed without lawful authorization. So those are some offenses that could give rise to suspicion in the first place.
And doesn't that open the whole, open up that can of worms when we talk about racial profiling? You see somebody who looks Hispanic and says, well, let me check them for their papers.
That's a great question, and that's been something that's troubled Latino people living in the Southwest for a long time. What the Obama administration did here is they said, we're challenging this law facially, which means even before it's put into effect, we're saying by the very terms of it, it's illegal. It infringes on federal prerogative. But later on, even if this case is unsuccessful, there could be a challenge based on how it's enforced. In other words, saying that profiling is happening. Because let's be realistic, I mean, that is something that's likely to happen more as a result of this law.
I think everybody knows you never try to guess what justices in a court are going to do, but any indication of what is likely to happen?
Well, the interesting thing this time is Justice Sotomayor, who's one of the liberal justices on the court, actually said to the Solicitor General, who represents the Obama administration, one of your points is not selling very well. She came out and said this during the argument.
Is that rare? Does that happen usually?
To be that frank about it, I mean, I think it happens, but Sotomayor had a lot of questions for both sides, and then here she was kind of saying that this point, she was sort of remarking on what everyone else seemed to be saying, that particular point wasn't selling well. And that was the point that that systematic cooperation, in other words, forcing state officials to cooperate with the federal government, was illegal on its face. But even if the court agrees with that and doesn't go along with the Obama administration on this point of what's called systematic cooperation, there are other reasons to strike the law down as well.
I think no matter what happens, the debate will continue regardless. So we thank you for your time, insight, and analysis. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.